I think the big misconception that a lot of people have about producers is they think producers are people who just find financing for their films.
I immediately fell in love with the story and the script.
We were looking for an arresting image that could be well represented in like a little icon on your TV.
There's something about bad sound that just reads as cheap.
This was a case of bend over and lose your filmic virginity, but you'll get a movie made and your name will be on it.
Anytime there's like that amount of money, there's going to be lawsuits.
There's nothing more important than the safety and the health of everyone who's working on a production.
It was like a passion project. They said, we want your movie. It was a bidding war. It was a major bidding war.
You can't buy that kind of publicity.
You're listening to Producerville, the only podcast to feature interviews with producers only in the independent world. And the purpose of the podcast is to help you become a better producer just by listening to the treasure trove of information coming from our producers that we're interviewing. This week, we're interviewing Nick Phillips, who made the 2016 movie Pet, P-E-T. Nick worked at two major studios in development before he started his own production company. So he's the first interviewee that we have that has studio experience, like a long period of time working at the studio, and a successful independent filmmaking experience. So he's got a perspective on how to approach movies as an independent producer that also blends a little bit with his studio past. So just making note of that. Nick talks about how he discovered the script for Pet many years before he actually produced it. He also talks about how a very simple and short, movie title like Pet, when combined with provocative artwork, can be a really good combination. He talks about CGI and how it's overused these days, and Nate and I across the board, agreed with him. And how he has an affinity for, practical effects, like John Carpenter, when he made The Thing, all of those practical effects, they make the movie look real. And so he talks about CGI being overused. And he has a really funny story about a severed head prop near the end of the interview that had us laughing.
Yeah, and Nick also talks about the special instructions he gave to the people on how to read the script for Pet. There's also a major special effect in the movie where they set someone on fire, and he talks about that. And he also talks about his experience at the South by Southwest Film Festival. He tells us a little bit about what it was like working at Dimension. So if you have interest in behind-the-scenes studio stuff, you'll enjoy that.
All right, here is Nick Phillips, producer of 2016's Pet.
Pet came to me when I was working, where I was running an independent horror label called Revolver Picture Company. And I was running it with my producing partner at the time. Her name is Kelly Wagner. She used to be a casting director, and we started this company together. And Pet was our fourth movie we had done. We started in 2012, and this is about 2016. And Pet came to us through Carlos Terrenz, the director of the film. But what's really interesting is that it had come across the desk of Kelly and I years prior. When I used to be an executive at Screen Gems at Sony, and I remember Pet was something that was sent to us, and we all really loved it. But at the end of the day, it didn't feel like a big studio movie. It was like a really small character drama. So, but we all loved the script, and Jeremy's such a great writer, and so we passed on it at Screen Gems at the time. Sort of right around that same time, my partner at Revolver, Kelly Wagner, was brought on to try to package up the movie and get some cast attached. She's a casting director, and she had loved the script back then as well. It obviously didn't end up finding life at that moment, but I think Dom Monahan was involved sort of at that point as well, in the sense that I don't know if he was formally attached at a certain point, but Dom Monahan had been talking to Kelly about it in that sense for years.
Okay.
This is around 2011, 2010. And then in 15 or 16, it came back to us through Carlos, the director of the film, who actually had the rights. Carlos acquired the rights from MGM. MGM had it for years, and they put it into Turnaround. And it had a little bit of money against it, but Carlos, and he had this sort of group of investors in Barcelona. He's from Spain. Had the rights to the script, and the connective tissue there is that Carlos was like a super close second for a movie that Kelly and I acquired but never made, or a script that we acquired called The Exorcist, Exorcism at Crooked Lake. And we were talking to directors to do that movie. It never got made, but Carlos was somebody we met with for that movie, and came in a close second, didn't get attached. But we said, what else are you working on? And he serendipitously kind of said, hey, I have the script Pet that I have the rights to and I want to direct, and I'm looking for a co-financier because he had some money through this group of investors in Barcelona.
Okay.
And Kelly and I both looked at each other, and we were so sort of taken aback because we had both. It was like that script that, like the one that got away a little bit,
right?
For both of us. And I think that was so interesting that we had both really been passionate about it in sort of a previous incarnation in our careers, and suddenly here it was coming right back to our desk, with a really great young director attached already, and that was it. We just said yes, we're in, and we agreed to put up half the money, and we'll talk more about the subsequent steps later. But that's what it was. It was just sort of a series of really. It just, like I said, there was just a lot of serendipity involved. That
right.
Really special script that I had liked in my studio days and Kelly liked in her independent casting days, and came back to us. And, you just take it as like, okay, that's somebody telling me to make this movie. So we did.
Right. That's really exciting. I mean, it's almost like a boomerang, it came back to you guys,
That's
like
right.
It was meant to be. How involved were you with the script once you had it? Did it change?
No, very little. And here's another big reason why Revolver why my company made the movie. So, we were very lucky to have a financier for this company, and that's like 1 in a million, right? So we had a very unique and opportunity we were grateful for. But the one thing that the investor said was like, he just didn't want to develop, right? He didn't want to spend speculative capital going, oh, you kind of like the idea of the script, but it needs a lot of work. Sure, let me pay to have it rewritten, right? He didn't want to do that. And I respected that. And in a way, I kind of agree with that too, because when I was at the studios, that was one of the, slightly soul deadening things about working as a studio executive, is that sometimes you see a movie, you buy a certain script and then after a year, it's just unrecognizable. So part of our mission statement, both out of a philosophical, foundation, but also out of financial necessity, was that we only acquired scripts we knew we were just going to make, right? Like,
right.
We made, we made a movie called Haunt. That was our first movie with Jackie Weaver and Ione Skye. And that was a script that was like pretty fully baked. Beneath was another movie we made with Jeff Fahey. Again, we read that and we're like, yep, we'll just go make this. And same with Pet, right? Like, because we had so many movies that we saw at Revolver that were like, you love the idea or this, but you would need like, 5 figures worth of rewrites or whatever, right? It's more than 0. So we just couldn't afford to waste time or money on developing a script. So Pet was something that was like just there. It just
right.
The script, it was there. And we didn't need to like do a page 1 rewrite or even a polish. It just was good to go. And that was again another factor in deciding to make it.
How long ago was the script written? Do you know, like before it was, because you kept saying about how it, kind of was like came to you early and then you kind of circled back to it. Do you know how long ago the script?
I can remember reading that script as far back as 2011.
Oh, wow.
I can look on my laptop while we sit here at the oldest draft that I have.
That's just interesting because a lot of people kind of have this presumption that you write a movie, someone reads it, they love it, and it gets made. They don't understand that there's so much time that can go.
Yes. And that is, again, part of, like I was saying in the answer to your first question, is that was part of what made the experience so rewarding, is you're like, this is one of those scripts that just hung around. It was there.
Yeah.
Like it was worth getting made, and eventually it did, right? I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm just saying, like, it just was a great example, as you said, Nate, of like scripts, sometimes you sell a spec right after you write it, and it goes and gets made. That's great, but that's the exception, not the rule. A lot of scripts, as you mentioned, just hang around. And if they're good enough and somebody and the right person believes it at the right time, then it can get made. So yes, the answer to your original question, the oldest I can remember reading it at like 2011, maybe 2010 when I was at Screen Gems. And I'm looking as we speak. I'm going to see what I want to see what the oldest draft is.
You want to know?
You guys got me curious.
While you're looking, how
Yes.
important is the title of a movie from a producing perspective? If you type the word pet in Google, your movie does not pop up, right? It's like It's the most common word in the world. Pet, but it's still a great name for the movie. So how important is the title, in your opinion, as a producer, is to nailing the perfect title for a movie?
It's extraordinarily important, but now that you ask that, and I think about the titles of the movies we made at Revolver, apparently not, because They were called Haunt.
It wasn't an insult.
Yeah, no, not Taken. It was called Haunt. Our movies are called Haunt, Beneath, and Pet. These are just completely generic words, singular words. But to answer your question, Tony, it's extremely important, right? Like, I've read scripts that are amazing, and you're like, man, that title is just fucking wrong for that movie,
right?
Or a movie that has a really cool name and the script is shit or whatever, right? But
yeah,
it's extraordinarily important in terms of how it's perceived, how it's marketed, even the title treatment, the font, all that, right, can just create this iconography. But we just thought the title was super stark and simple and obviously ironic. So in that, I mean, we just went with it. I very rarely have been involved in a movie where we just changed the title. Most of the time, I guess I kind of lucked out and worked on movies with good titles, but rarely have been part of a movie where, and in those instances, by the way, the change was worth it. It was the right idea.
Right.
You know, but the short answer to your question is very important. The title of a movie is very important to me. It really does affect your perception of the movie.
Can you talk a little bit about, once the production started to get rolling a little bit and you were in pre-production, can you talk about the casting process?
So as I mentioned, my partner at Revolver was Kelly Wagner, and she had a casting company before Revolver. And then when she joined Revolver, her casting company was sort of the reins were given over to a casting director named Dominica Pazzarit. And she at the time was working with a casting director named Janelle Scuderi, and they actually shared office space with us. So they obviously just were familiar with the script and ready to go. And we could, and again, with Kelly with a casting background, we can just sort of got up and running in that sense. In terms of the casting, and they did a great job, by the way. Again, we went to Dom first because, I don't know, we thought about other people sort of, and to be really frank with you, like the part is written as younger. On the page, it's more like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an archetypal actor for the role, and I, for the life of me, can't remember. But like, we were just thinking, but you never offered it to anybody else. We just sort of were thinking about other people. And then, like I said, Kelly remembered that Dom was, again, either interested or attached. I can't remember, but he was kind of around, and we reapproached him about it. And
so it was something that he had previously been shown.
Correct. And was really interested in. So it obviously felt like a smart place to go. Somebody that we felt like was a really good actor. He, meant something in the marketplace and was interested in the material. We felt like he would say yes. Right. So yeah, we sort of knocked on his door, and he was in, and that was huge. And in a way, as I'm telling it almost makes me remember how sort of effortless it was, because Dom just always sort of seemed to exist with the movie. It just was so him, and he made the role so much his own. So, he just was on board, and we made his deal. And I think that the fact when you have a really good actor and somebody who's known in the genre like Dom, and then you actually have the money to make it, then obviously the project gets taken a little more seriously. So at that point, we were just off and running. We were financed. We had a great lead actor. And then next came, of course, Holly, which was, a huge role. It's even great on paper, not to mention that the way Cassini brings it to life, but you're just reading it and you're like, oh my God, this is such a great fucking part. So again, we were like, all right, we got Dom Monahan, so let's maybe try to get another name. Yeah, again, we were an independent company. We wanted to go people that were good and right for the part, but you want somebody that had, maybe some name value or whatever. And we're looking at all these people, and they had some auditions, and we're just looking at all these tapes. And then Ksenia comes in, and Ksenia did a self-tape, meaning she didn't go in to audition. She was somewhere else and put herself on camera and read for the role. And she fucking nailed it. I mean, I remember watching it, and she has these great, amazing eyes, right? So in her eyes, you saw the ability to be vulnerable, but also to turn on a dime and be a little unstable, right? She just had all of that going on. And we just were like, oh, fuck it. Let's just, let's cast her. I guess a little bit akin, and I'm in no way comparing these movies. I'm just saying, when, let's say, Fincher puts Rosamund Pike in Gone Girl, that makes it more interesting because she's not as well known, right? She can inhabit the part more because it wasn't, a super A-list person, and not that she's not, but you know what I mean? Like, we just suddenly were like, oh, maybe that's an interesting way to go. because Ksenia is not as well known, but she's really talented and she nailed the audition. And it's just kind of a cooler way to go because she can make the part more her own than it being, oh, there's actress X playing this part. So we just went off to the races with her. And we were excited to have her and just felt like that was a real catch. Jeanette McCurdy, that role is really fantastic as well on paper. And Jeanette was looking to do, she was on Nickelodeon shows and she was a sort of a child star, and she really wanted to do something different. She wanted to do something, quote unquote edgier or whatever, and just a darker movie, darker role. So she came in and gave a great read and was really fantastic. And we were like really excited and lucky to have Jeanette. It was one of the few people I've ever worked with that my kids had heard of so far. But yeah, she was a total catch, and she came in and, she wanted to get we put arm sleeve tattoos on her. She really wanted to go for it. And she had really good specific ideas as well of what the character was. And those three were the sort of anchor cast for the movie. For most days it was just Dom and Ksenia in that little room with the cage in it and all that. But just to keep going down, like Nathan Parsons and Davon McDonald, and actually a friend of mine has had a day player part. My friend John Ross Bowie, who was in the show Speechless for a few seasons on ABC. He's a friend of mine. He came in and played a scene as a doctor. And when we first started casting the movie and getting crew for the movie, we had to always specifically tell people to read the whole thing, because if you read the first 20, 30 pages of Pet, you think it's going to be one thing, right? You think it's going to be this kind of malevolent, cynical movie about a guy holding a woman prisoner and like torturing her. Like, there's just no way I would have made a movie like that. There's just no, it felt like a torture porn movie. And a lot of people said that. And we would always encourage them, like, please, 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 like, read the whole thing, because obviously it goes in different places. There's a psychological element, there's twists, there's all these things. The movie has a lot to say about, relationships. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it is sort of a metaphorical look at power dynamics and relationships between two people, and we really wanted to focus on that. So one of the big challenges in casting and crewing up the movie was to always make sure that people read the whole thing, because it is not at all what you think it's going to be after the first 20 to 30 pages.
Well, I think that's the strength of the script too. I mean, that's when things get, it's interesting up until that point, but then you're like, oh, that's, and it's not just one twist. It keeps, twisting. I especially love the scene with the security guard when he comes in and makes the discovery. And,
that's right.
It was a really great scene. And by the way, that actor was great. I loved him. I thought
Davon McDonald, he was awesome.
He was, yeah. You just
really good guy.
Liked him.
Yeah,
this is a great guy. And so when he's in that situation, you just like, it breaks your heart. You
have to have that combination of the role's got to be good on the page, obviously, and then you have to match it with this actor that can bring it to life. And he just nailed it. And his interrelationship with Dom's character is just so comical and almost at times adversarial, at times nice. It just he was a highlight to work with too. And then he had to endure like the scene where he's laying on the floor half the day and they're viciously murdering him. I mean, he was really fantastic. Yes, we just got a great cast together. It was a really good group of the three main leads, and then a really good, great bunch of character actors. The casting was a pleasure. Again, it's fun to cast a movie when you're not doing it to get money. It's obviously more fun to cast it when you have the money.
Right, exactly.
So you can take some more chances and find interesting people or this or that. And so a great cast.
Wow. I just noticed that you had Gary Tunnicliffe played a homeless guy.
Yes.
I didn't have to watch it again. I didn't even notice that.
I can't remember that. Pet must have been maybe the 15th or 16th movie I've done with Gary. I've been working with him since the turn of the century.
Okay.
Known him for years, and inevitably, for whatever reason, Gary ends up in the movie itself. He's done it a few times. He won't, especially going back to when I was at Dimension. But he played the homeless guy, but also did all of our makeup effects as well. He was, doing all that great stuff when there's that, dismembering at the end and all that, but I'm giving it all away. But
right.
yes, yeah, Gary appeared on screen. My older daughter is actually visible on the bus at the beginning of the movie. Dom's riding on a bus, and you can see my little daughter. I'm next to her, but I'm cut out of the shot. But it was fun. It just was, like I said, we shot it here, which is a separate question. But yeah, like I said, the casting just all the way down to just day players was just great on the movie.
Great.
Now, and hopefully the answer to this doesn't jump too far ahead into the future questions, but just briefly on the casting.
Yes.
Casting, like as a producer, getting somebody like Dominic cast in the main role of the movie, knowing that someone like him has this fan base and followers due to, projects like Lost and Lord of the Rings, is that something that you think ends up helping in the long run for distribution, budget, things like that?
Yes. I mean, short answer is yes. And, in this instance, and hopefully in most instances, not only was Dom, helpful in a marketing sense, but he was right for the role, right? So that to me personally, that's the balance. Like,
right.
It sucks sometimes when you see somebody like put in a role they're not right for, but they were sort of maybe cynically put in because they're a name, right? Like, I'm not you thinking of any specific movie. It's just sort of something you see sometimes. But I love the fact that Dom helped in that way. He had a following. He was known to audiences, but also was just like spot on and a good actor and right for the role. So yes, but it does matter. It does, I mean, you wish it didn't sometimes, but it does. You have to entice people somehow to see the movie while also making a good product.
Yeah.
Can you, so let's move over to like location scouting. Can you talk a little bit about that? Did you have much to do with that process, and how did you guys kind of find like the right locations for the movie?
I did. And I got to know Los Angeles so much better in the 3 to 4 weeks we were location scouting than I did in the, 10 plus years I lived there prior to that. I mean, we spent hours and hours a day driving around the city, looking for places, getting the right look and feel, and trying to create like a Los Angeles, trying to create a specific version of Los Angeles, but not Los Angeles, right? Like, we looked at the time, Nightcrawler was a movie we looked at as a really specific sort of design influence in terms of how it portrays a version of Los Angeles at night and all this stuff. But again, like just spending days in the car, we had a great location scout named Carlos Aragon, who actually helped me produce and find this great location for a short I directed right after Pet, but he's awesome. And again, we just spent hours in the car, getting to know the city. A lot of the places end up being downtown or on the east side. But no, it was pretty painstaking. Carlos is a really prepared director, and I might be jumping to another question, but Carlos is a really prepared director, and he knew what he wanted the movie to feel like, and he knew the kind of version of LA that he wanted to portray. So scouting for this movie was so much fun, because a lot of times you're scouting in a city you've never been to, which is cool. I love doing it. I've gotten to know so many cities around the world by scouting, but this was cool because it's the city you live in, and there's places you've never seen or heard of. And so location scouting for this movie was really, really interesting.
Very cool. So, okay. So how did you assemble the crew then for the movie? So you've got your director, you've got the script, you've got all your money and stuff. How did you as producer round up the crew?
Crewing a movie is equally as fun as casting it. Putting together this group of people, all the department heads and all the people they work with, and kind of cobbling together this family to make, hopefully the best product you can, especially on this movie, was super fun. And it kind of was an interesting amalgamation of people that Carlos had worked with and people that I or Kelly had worked with. And they all did fantastic. Like Christina Laboda is the production designer. She was fantastic. And she had worked with Carlos on his short called Sequence. Timothy Burton, the DP, shot Beneath, our previous feature. Tim's work on that movie was outstanding on Beneath, and he was just a no-brainer. We really wanted Carlos to meet with him and make sure he sort of gelled with him, and luckily he did. Tim was somebody we were really wanting to shoot the movie. Olivia Miles did a great job with the wardrobe. She's somebody that came in through our line producer. It was interesting too because half the money came from Revolver and half came from the group of Spanish investors. So basically I'm trying to think of the second half of the movie, all the post work was done in Spain, right? So again, it was like this really perfect amalgamation of people that Carlos knew and trusted, people that we knew and trusted, and we ended up obviously trusting each other's judgment on those people. So it was a really cool mix of people that we were all in one way or another comfortable with, and I think we just got a really great crew.
Can you talk a little bit about the pre-production for the special effects? I know there's a lot of what appeared to be anyways practical gore effects in the movie.
Yes. Yeah. Just to start off, in terms of gore effects and those kinds of special effects, I just try to use CGI as little as possible. And I just think that practical, tangible things that are in the room that you can see are always better.
Totally with you on that. The CGI is ridiculous. Especially in horror movies.
Yeah. It just makes all, you look at like Rob Bottin's stuff, obviously on John Carpenter's The Thing, is so much more effective than seeing a CGI version of it kind of running around, right? So
absolutely.
I'm not talking about the sequel of the thing. I'm just saying, I'm talking about old school sort of practical effects versus new stuff.
It's like CGI to me always, in my opinion, it's like it should exist for things that you can't do practically, like crash a plane and crash a train. And now it's like, oh, someone got shot, and instead of using a squib, we're just going to do it later digitally. And it's like,
right. And you can tell, and there's a texture, right? You can just tell. And I fear that if let's say, my kids aren't old enough yet to see it. Well, maybe they are, but like something like Jaws, right, would look ridiculous to them, like this mechanical shark. And it was obviously just traumatizing to me growing up in the 70s. But like, for example, CGI sharks just don't look scary to me, but that fucking rubber Bruce shark freaks me out. I don't know. Like I'm with you. We're all on the same page there. Like there's just something about a real fit, or, obviously Rick Baker stuff on American Werewolf in London, right? Like now werewolf transitions are just CGI. I'm like, dude, no, I want to see David Naughton's, hand. No, it's not really his hand, but his hand, expand itself. That is so much more believable. But I worry sometimes that that's becoming a lost art, because I think so many people are used to seeing CGI, and sometimes they don't even know they're seeing it. So who knows? That's a whole nother podcast, guys.
Right.
We'll do that one. I'm just kidding.
That one's next.
Sorry. Oh, so prep. I'm sorry. So like I said, Carlos is super prepared, and I just cannot stress that enough. So he and Timothy Burton, the DP, would sit in the conference room in our offices, and Carlos, he had this like little mock-up of, because again, most of the movie takes place in this room where Dominic's character, Seth, keeps her in a cage. So that was our main set. So we were going to build it. And in order to shoot it, Carlos, remember that Seinfeld episode where George builds that little mock-up of the conference room to figure out who stepped on his briefcase?
Right.
Yeah. It was like that. Like Carlos had this little Lego mock-up of the room, and him and Tim would sit there and figure out the best angles to shoot from. And I say this in a obviously, funny, but also respectful way. Like Tim and Carlos would sit there for hours at our offices, really designing the movie visually. Christina really was thorough in terms of designing that room, especially because it was our hero set, to the point where we have these beautiful miniatures. I still have pictures of them, miniatures of the room. So again, you could sort of like really better than Lego versions, like a really nice handcrafted foam miniature of the room. So there was really a lot of prep. And that's one of the things I appreciated about Carlos, is that the movie became like, as a producer, the first thing you want to do, one of the main things you want to do is when you come to set that first morning, you better know and feel like everything's in place, right? Like,
right.
You go, maybe this will turn out okay. Like, this is one of the movies I worked on where it was like, I know he knows how he wants the movie to look. I've seen all the locations. We've seen this. We've looked at that. We've seen the wardrobe. Like, it just really felt like every detail had been looked at in the movie. So the prep was really thorough. It was pleasurable, it was enjoyable. Wasn't very stressful because everybody was really behind the movie. Not that I've worked in movies where people aren't, but like everybody's just really into it. And the cast, Carlos worked well with the cast, and they were very invested in their roles. So prep was great. And one other thing I want to add to locations too is it's a combination of practical locations and stage locations. So we really got a good flavor of not only practical real locations in LA, but some of the great soundstage spaces that are in this city. Again, some of which before this film I didn't know about. And there's just really great places with standing sets or just really nice space. So it just was a really good mixed look at the locations in LA.
Have you ever worked with a director that you just weren't happy with?
No, I have not gotten along with any director I've worked with. I've never been unhappy with them. I'm really sitting here thinking about it. I'm really lucky to be able to say that. But there's obviously times within that process that you disagree,
right.
Or you don't, For me, my first 15 years of my career was as a studio executive. So the sort of perspective that I was coming from or sort of ordered to come from was just like, this is it, right? Like,
yeah,
this is how we're doing it. And my boss wants you to do this. And that's that. And that was, sometimes that decision was right. Sometimes it wasn't right. And, that's why I liked being a producer at Revolver better, because you get to be more of an advocate, but also have your own opinion, right? Because you're not beholden to studio norms, but you also have literally a money invested in the movie, so you get to have
right.
a bit of say. But again, it all comes from a good creative place. So no, one piece of advice I would give to young producers is, as quickly as you can, as organically as you can, make sure the director knows that you speak the same language. Right. I can remember, you'd go to location somewhere if you're not shooting in LA and you're sitting there at like the hotel bar with the director and just trying to get to know them. And as long, as happens when people have a few drinks, they talk about movies or music, right? You just got to let them know that your influences or your references or your passion for movie making is akin to theirs, right? You might they might look at you as the suit or the money or whatever, but as long as you can get to them on a personal level and just say, hey, look, we all want to make something really cool. And I love movies and I like these movies. And, and that only, that not only works sitting in a bar talking, but also just on set too. If I've been on movies where you go, oh, that's a beautiful shot. It's kind of like that opening shot in this movie, like if you kind of literally and figuratively speak their language, and they know you're coming from a genuine place of loving movies, then that goes a long way towards building trust with the director. Because like I said, being a studio executive, they just immediately, I feel like, not they can't trust you, but, they immediately look at you as someone that might be working antithetically to what they're trying to do. And you have to show them that you're not.
Yeah.
That you might represent the money, but you're all looking to make something, interesting and with high production value, and hopefully something that works for an audience too.
Yeah. Yeah. So how many days was the shoot?
22.
22. Oh, wow.
22. About the norm, right? For a movie of this budget, that's about the norm. And also this is shooting in LA, which is not inexpensive. The movie didn't cost a lot. Low single-digit $1 million. That gets you a lot in LA. Again, like we looked at other places and we thought about going to Georgia or at the time Michigan. There was other interesting places to go, places with good crew bases and good infrastructure. But we just wanted to stay in LA. And we wanted it to become a character in the movie, even if you didn't explicitly know it was Los Angeles.
What'd you shoot it on?
The Alexa, and I want to say we did not use anamorphic lenses on this. We used anamorphic lenses on Beneath, and I'm a fan of anamorphic 100%. We worked with the Red on another movie. It was great. We just liked the Alexa better. And it was a single camera shoot. Super rare, and I hate it, but we did it.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of, I could see that being, it just takes longer, it's like.
It does, and you just don't get I know you're paying for a second camera body and lens package and all that, but I just feel I sleep better with all that coverage. It's like a warm blanket,
It's like insurance. It's just the backup, on top of that.
Oh, what a great moment. Oh, maybe we can use that over, against with that line reading or, whatever it is, right? So yes, I prefer 2-camera setup.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
exactly. Okay, so can you tell us what the production just was like? I mean, I'm getting a sense that it was really fun and really great and everything, but were there anything that happened during the production that was maybe unexpected, where you had a challenge that you had to fix?
One thing that we knew was going to be a challenge, but it wasn't unexpected, was, most of the movie takes place in this one room where Seth keeps Holly in this cage. So we built that set on a little soundstage over near that 9-hole golf course in Los Feliz Railroad Studios. And we scheduled the first 8 days of shooting to be in that location. We just got the biggest meat of the movie, front loaded it, and kind of went for it. But the big challenge there was that Ksenia is in a cage for 8 days of shooting. And it was, you obviously wanted to approach that as humanely and sympathetically and empathetically and any other Ali word as possible. So we just kind of made sure that she was as comfortable as, it was funny. She was almost to the point where, we're like, are you sick of anything? She's kind of like, I'm sick of people asking me if I'm okay. Because between every show, this amazing, fantastic actress is like in this cage. And literally as soon as the camera cuts, everybody, are you all right? Do you need anything? Do you need anything? Do you need anything? And, we try to be as there for her as we can. And to her credit, she was just a total trooper. And at any given moment, someone was sitting there, talking to her and we had a few nice chats. And again, if there was a long gap between setups, she would leave the cage. But there was times where she just would kind of hang out in there, and she just was amazing. And I think maybe that helped inform her role a little bit, perhaps. Just kind of having that edge a little bit. So I thought she really did a great job, especially in those scenes. So yeah, that was a big challenge. Is like, oh my gosh, we have this poor actress sitting in a cage for 8 days. And, pretty limited set, but it was a built set. So it had wild walls. Carlos had as much room to do some coverage as he wanted. And we sort of backloaded all the blood stuff so we wouldn't have to clean up this. We shot a lot of that. Actually, almost all the cage stuff we shot chronologically, because the state of the room kind of deteriorates throughout the movie. And by the end, there's blood everywhere. But yeah, that was a big one. And just other challenges was just shooting, downtown LA. We would do night shoots, like, splits, or like, 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. and some craziness there. But no, it just was fairly smooth. I can't think of any, huge seismic things, but just the normal day-to-day sort of challenges you face.
Right. There was a scene in the movie where somebody's on fire in a tunnel. Can you talk about that? How did you film that scene? What were the requirements for that? What permits did you need? What safety measures did you have?
All of the above. Everything was done. We had a really fantastic stunt department, and they took that burn really serious. You were setting somebody on fire.
Oh,
I've been doing this. I've been doing this for 25 years, and that's maybe only the second full body burn I've done. Rigorous preparation, safety meetings, when you're shooting it on the day, you're super nervous and you're kind of there and you're asking all the questions that need to be asked and you're letting the professionals do their part. And those guys were really fantastic. And, so as long as you're prepared and all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, at a certain point you sit back and you shoot it. That part is kind of awesome. You're sitting there. It's so surreal. You're like, okay, everybody, it's safe. Okay, everybody's ready. Let's do this. And this freaking guy on fire comes around the corner, and you're like, holy shit! And it was great. Yeah, we did that in the middle of the night down near the 6th Street Bridge in downtown LA, and they were all just fantastic. That whole stunt department was great. They had a full burn to do, and they took it seriously. And I thought it looked kind of. He comes out under this tunnel, and the flames are kind of reflecting off the top of the tunnel. It was a nice little moment for the movie.
It looked great. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, but those kinds of effects, they affect your insurance, right? They affect, and they take a lot longer to clear in terms of permits and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about, first of all, was it the only thing you shot on that day? Was it all just one big setup?
No.
Oh, wow.
That was a big chunk of the night towards the end of the night, but no, that was part of the day. but the great thing about shooting in LA is getting those permits and getting that paperwork done is so seamless, because this is like, you know what I mean? Like the town is so used to doing this, and there's other great cities, obviously, in America that or around the world that have great infrastructure. But no, that process, it felt all by the book. It felt really prepared and professional and safe. So it was a pleasure doing that. I mean, you're nervous a little bit, but you also know that you're in the hands of really great people. And for that second that the guy runs around, around the corner burning, you enjoy it for a second, I guess.
It's just so fucking cool.
Yeah, it's just so weird.
That's the moment where you're like, oh shit, this isn't CGI. This guy's really on fire.
We should have done this in CG.
Yeah, damn it. We should have used it on this one. No, he's volunteering, he's safe, and he was fine. And it was great. That was a really fun moment. And a lot of those nights were interesting. Like I said, towards the end of the schedule, there's a lot of night exteriors and downtown.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's just an interesting way to experience the city. And it just was a different view of the city that you don't get a lot.
Yeah.
Wow. So moving into, the production's done, the movie's shot. Moving into post-production, can you talk a little bit about the editing process along with like the sound and the scoring of the film?
Yeah, that's an interesting part of the equation. So again, part of the agreement for the co-financing with the company in Spain was that post would be done there. And I was fine with it. Again, they had a good infrastructure of people and I like the editor. The editor was somebody I think Carlos had worked with, and the composer, what was his name, Zacharias de la Rivas. He was great, and he had all these people they had used and worked with in Spain, and we kind of vetted that, and that worked out well. But I'll tell you, it was an interesting experience. That was the first time I've done that, because you basically hand off the negative, and it just flies over the Atlantic, and we didn't see a cut for a while. Of course, there's always at least 5 to 8 weeks where the director has his cut and does all that work, but it was just weird to kind of hand the movie off, and have it edited somewhere else. Because normally after that 8 weeks, you're there, right? Like I always like sitting in the editing room and helping out, and it's just part of that process. But we just kind of weren't, there was never any editing done here. But you gave notes over email, and the cut turned out great. But this movie was unique in that sense because post just didn't happen here. So we really put a lot of trust in those guys over there, and they did a really fantastic job.
Did you have any reshoots?
No, we didn't have reshoots. On a movie, eventually there's this like little list that builds up of like, we'll get it later. We'll get that shot of the hand later. Or we'll get that insert of the car later. And so towards the end, we were just doing a lot of like nights where we would just, have to spend some time doing little pickups and stuff, pickups of scenes we had shot weeks, days prior. We did not. And again, that was part of the structure of Revolver, was that that just wasn't part of our DNA. We couldn't develop, and we didn't do a bunch of reshoots. It just was like, make the movie from the script you have and do a good job,
Yeah.
So we didn't really have that safety net.
Okay, so after the movie's cut and everything, can you talk about the distribution and maybe the marketing and how involved you were in maybe the poster design and bringing that visibility to Pet?
Okay, so the movie's done, and then you begin that, nerve-wracking, arduous process of trying to get your movie seen, because here you have this investment. Our investors put this money into it, and it's this movie.
Right.
It's in the can. It's done. You think it's good, but you don't know if anybody's ever going to see it. So we had the great fortune of having, for this movie in particular, we had UTA and Paradigm, the agencies, sort of helping sell the movie, which was obviously a huge advantage. I mean, we were really grateful for that, because the UTA repped the director and the writers, and Paradigm sort of repped us. So we just submitted it to festivals, that whole thing, which is such a nerve-wracking, horrible process, and not horrible in the sense that you might not get in. But we submitted to a few festivals, did not get into Sundance, but then we got into South by Southwest, which was just like,
that's fantastic.
I remember opening the email, sitting in our offices, and I leapt up, ran into Kelly's office. I was like, holy shit, we got into South by. So that was just huge.
Sure.
again, we had submitted to a handful of festivals that they took us. Of course, we were going to go, and that was just amazing. Obviously their organization is fantastic. So we got into South by and made our way down there, which was fun. I remember like 10 minutes before the screening at South by Southwest, I just had that that pit in your stomach. You're just so freaking nervous, and the lights are about to go down, and we're about to watch the movie, and you're just dying. But
yeah,
the experience of being there, I don't go to a ton of festivals personally, and the experience of being there and having a movie there and talking to other filmmakers and talking to the people from the festival and how much they appreciated the movie was just rewarding for all of us, for myself, Kelly, and Carlos, and Dom and Ksenia. We were all down there, and it was well received, and we did a great Q&A afterwards. So, I mean, again, like the process of getting this movie finished and then sort of, into a festival was thankfully, fairly smooth and straightforward. And from there, somebody saw that screening at South by, and we had a few people interested in the movie, a few companies, and the company we ended up going with was Samuel Goldwyn Films, who really, came in with, a lot of enthusiasm and a really great plan to put the movie out and sell the movie. And they were great to work with. And a couple of the people there I'd already worked with in the past. So it just was a really great fit. And they just really came in enthusiastic about the movie. And for the poster, I love the poster of this movie. I really do.
I was just going to say, I think it's fantastic. It's got a very iconic look to it. When you look at it, it's like, what's that? It's not just an actor's face. It's
right.
Oh my God, what is that? I have to see that. And then it says a fascinating psychological thriller.
Right.
And so how involved were you with the marketing and the look of the poster and all that stuff?
Samuel Goldwyn was really just really great about involving you in the process, involving us as the filmmakers in the process. And what something to go back to in terms of the image of the poster, you have to have like an arresting image. And in this day and age, you can't just think about it as sitting in the poster sitting in the lobby of a multiplex or whatever. You have to think about the icon on a streamer. If somebody's running around on iTunes or Amazon or whatever, right? Whatever platform you're on, you go, what, like you said, what the hell is that? What is that image? We were looking for an arresting image that could be well represented in like a little icon on your TV. So Golden did a great job of kind of coming up with maybe a half a dozen to a dozen looks for the poster. And they send them to you and you give notes and they come back, in terms of the title treatment or the logo or the copy that's on there. You definitely get input, and that was fantastic. But we all kind of agreed on that sort of heart-shaped cage and the sort of starkness of the image and the color palette and all that. Like that one really jumped out at everybody. And again, it's one of those fortunate moments where everybody agrees, because you don't want to have like half people like one and half like the other. Suddenly, everybody kind of was like, "That's the one."
Yeah,
we really felt like that. So that just, again, that was just a really easy, pleasurable process. We just had, you had asked earlier about the title, and obviously title matters, and obviously, and poster matters too. It's like,
well, the title with the image,
right,
becomes it becomes a cohesive like unit. It's not just pet; it's pet with this image.
That is correct.
It gives weight to the title.
And it matters, I mean, like, look, the cornerstone is a good script and a good movie, right? We all want to make a good script, make a very good movie from a really good script. But you have to sell it. You have to have people look at it and go, "Oh, I want to see that. That looks really interesting. What is that?" So we really cared about that. We had put all this time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears and money into this movie, and I was really thankful, because I've been involved in processes where you have a really shitty poster and you have no sway over whether it works. I don't really know about that, but we all just breathed this sigh of relief, and you're like, "Yep, cool poster, great, okay, good, these guys nailed it." And in terms of the release, it was, it was fairly in line with what works for independent genre movies. It wasn't a big wide release, and that's fine. We all wish for that, but that's not what happened, and we didn't really expect that to happen in a sense. So, they put it on I think at its peak, it was on 13 screens in like, cities all over the country. And and they do that as sort of to uplift the eventual VOD and
Sure.
home entertainment releases. But in that 13 city release plan, they did a great job, and they put as much as they could into it. And then in terms of its release in streaming, it was great. It's got a lot of good critical feedback. It got a lot of good audience feedback. It made a little bit of money. So again, you'd rather have the big Friday release and the weekend grosses and all that, but for what this movie was and as idiosyncratic and different as it was, it really worked out well for us.
Once the movie started getting screened finally, and critics were seeing it, audiences were seeing it, obviously that's when the reviews start to roll out. As a producer, is that something that you look forward to? Do you avoid reading reviews? How is that process for you?
You try like hell to avoid reading reviews, but you do. You have to. You can't not spend a couple years of your life creating this product or work of art or a mixture of both, and not try to figure out what people thought about it. So yeah, like immediately after Sundance, it was some I can't remember what publication, but it was like the 9 best horror movies to come out of South by that year or whatever, and Pet was one of them, and you're just so psyched. And I remember like forwarding that link to like everybody I knew, and just what I liked about Pet is it wasn't just blatantly commercial, and that goes back to the reason, that goes back to the fact that we had to pass on it at the studios. Like everybody loved it, but it just wasn't a overly or overtly commercial endeavor. Everybody thought it was good, but
right.
It wasn't this that or the next thing. So what I like about Pet is that it was an entertaining movie, commercially entertaining and not mainstream, but an interesting movie. But it also had some critical appreciation. You like reading reviews of it that get the psychological aspect, or that appreciate the performances, or the craftsmanship. At the very minimum, when I make a movie, if people say it's at least well made, well crafted, I'll take that.
Right.
Right. There's a lot of maybe interesting movies that look like shit, or a lot of movies that look amazing that are shit. But like to have a movie that's appreciated, but also appreciated for its thematic value as well as its technical value, that's to me it's a home run, no matter how much money it makes.
So looking back on the entire production, it was only a couple of years ago, but is there anything that you would have done differently as a producer on this movie?
Let me think
it's
about
a
it.
Good one, right?
Yeah, because the answer no is such a boring fucking answer. Good question. I have two answers. All right, two answers. One, and these are both things that I've complimented so far in this interview. But one, like I personally would have shot on anamorphic lenses. Okay. Again, that was a conscious decision that Carlos and Tim made. They're both still good friends of mine, and the movie looks awesome. I'm just saying I would have done that differently because I love anamorphic. I don't not shoot on it if I have all the say in the matter. The other one too, and this is really interesting, is I just sang the praises of doing this, but in a weird way, like I wish we would have shot, like sometimes, not all the time, sometimes I wish we would have shot it somewhere else, because there's just no rebate. There's no tax incentive system here, and when you're the financier, you think about like, oh, if we go to blah, 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 we get a quarter of our budget back or whatever, those are practical considerations. They're obviously driven by money and business realities, and that's fine. That's part of the job, but it would have been nice to get
some money back.
Yeah, to get some money back before we even fucking finish the movie. But that being said, again, the movie looks great. LA is a character, and I got to go home in my own bed every night, all that. But
that has value. There's
definitely value in all that. But no, if there are times where I said, what if we had shot it in blah blah blah. So yeah, that's what I might have done differently. But again, satisfied with how the movie turned out, of course.
So this is going to be like kind of Well, not off topic question, just kind of a fun one. Where's the cage now? Did someone keep the cage? Is that cage still around somewhere?
It's in my basement.
It's like the ultimate.
No.
I was just going to say that.
No, oh wait, no, not the cage. I think one of the fake cinder blocks used to bash Davon's heads in was in our office for a while. But no, the cage was, no, it was all just, we usually fold and hold after a movie, you know, just in case. But I think eventually we just sort of got rid of everything, unfortunately. You know, we just couldn't. Yeah, I have the Revolver archives. So we have a warehouse in Van Nuys. I'm just kidding. No, unfortunately, all that stuff is probably, you know, somewhere else.
Well, Nate is asking because he's a movie memorabilia collector.
No, believe me, I'd love to give it to you. I'd love it. You know, I do have actually. There is an alternate poster that I have. We designed a poster in house for South by because we didn't have distribution yet. And
wow! What was that poster? What was the image?
It was like my instructions. Not my instructions. That sounds obnoxious. But like one of my ideas was to make it like Saul Bass, kind of like it was almost like a 60s. I'll send it to you guys. It's like it just looked like it was from the 60s. You know, almost like Anatomy of a Murder. Those old 60s, 50s, and 60s posters.
Oh, cool.
That was my. But it was so we have this really sort of quote rare one sheet for the movie that was made just for South by. So
wow.
Tell you what, Nate, I'll get you one of those, buddy. No problem.
Nice.
But no, like, yeah, all that. I'm trying to think of anything I kept from that movie. No, wish I did. Now I wish I'd kept the cage. Thanks, guys.
Right? It wouldn't that be great in your garage? Just set up like the cage in my garage.
Exactly. I sleep in it sometimes, you know.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, I'm Googling Pet right now, and I'm looking at that. There's a Japanese poster.
Yeah. Last year, 2 years ago, a little theater in Taiwan contacted us about the rights, the stage rights. This little theater in China put on a stage version of Pet, and they were so nice. The negotiations took months because it just was like weeks in between emails, but it was such an easy, straightforward deal, and there was very little money changed hands. But when it was all said and done, and they said they were so nice and they were so passionate about the source material, and they sent us photographs of the production. It was cool. So yeah, it's been translated to a stage play, which is funny, which is so, it makes sense, right? It's so logical. When they contacted me about that, I said, oh yeah, that makes so much sense.
It's tailor made for the stage.
It's a stage play. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Well, I mean, it's character driven, you know.
Correct. And it's in one place mostly, and it's psychological.
Yeah.
It just was a testament. It was flattering to make the movie, but I mean, it must be flattering for Jeremy Slater, who wrote the movie. It's just kind of cool. I thought that was neat. And wow. I'll give an interesting one too. For a hot second, there was thoughts of a sequel.
Oh, wow.
There was like, I wouldn't say demand. There just was interest. Like the movie did really well in a lot of overseas territories, and some of those companies that represented overseas, distribution companies were saying, maybe I'll put in this, or I'll give you a minimum guarantee of this, and we thought maybe we could cobble together a budget to make the sequel. But to be honest, I don't know. Like it just didn't seem like a movie that was franchisable. We had a couple ideas, but it just seemed. I don't know, and I've been involved in a lot of sequels. Like Tony, I did like Hellraiser movies and Crow movies and Halloween. Like I've just been involved in so many movies with colons and numbers in them. Like this was a movie that like and Carlos, to his great credit, was really the one that's like, I just don't think this movie deserves a sequel. So we just kind of eventually the idea just eventually sort of fizzled out. But I can tell you, for a little while there, we explored and had a couple treatments for possible sequels, which was just hilarious to think about. But it just didn't feel right in a way at the end of the day.
So what are you currently working on? Is there anything that you want to talk about or can talk about or would like to promote?
Well, hilariously, no pun intended, the last couple of years I've been doing mostly comedies. I've just made a complete fucking pivot. And the last couple of years I've been doing comedy TV for streamers. I did a remake of the old Michael Keaton movie, Mr. Mom, for MGM and Voodoo.
Oh yeah.
I did a show for a couple seasons on Facebook Watch called The Real Bros of Simi Valley, which is hilarious. I actually sold a digital series of my own that I wrote called Zoe. It's like a female spy thriller. I ended up the company I sold it to had like regime change, so I ended up getting that project back. But I've just been producing all these series for, like I said, Voodoo and Facebook Watch, but also working on my own stuff. I just had a short film that I directed that premiered on this channel called Alter on YouTube. It's this horror shorts channel that's run by a company called Gunpowder and Sky, and it's gotten up to, I don't know, 175,000 views and a lot of great feedback. Wow. So I'm just like I said, in between producing these shows, I'm just, I don't know, writing and creating my own stuff, which is advice I always give people that I'm finally taking, to heart myself, which is always try to create your own material and find stories you want to tell on your own and not just be a producer all the time. So like I said, producing a lot of TV, which is what a lot of people are doing, is features are a little harder to get made now, but in between just writing my own stuff and directing my own stuff, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Which is more enjoyable, comedy, horror, thriller? What's your preference?
That is a great question, Tony. And I've had this conversation because on these comedies I've been doing the last couple seasons, the last couple years, it's really great to see, you go by the script and you do a couple takes of what's in the script, and then they'll kind of say, this is 2, 3, or 4 takes of improv, and to watch these folks at work and to see how each take is different and just see them riffing and just laugh. It's like, on comedies, you're constantly laughing all day. Whereas, on horror movies, there's like severed heads and, gallons of, let me juxtapose that with another story. So I cast the same actor in 2 movies when I was at Dimension. He was in this movie called Dracula Ascension. It's a guy named Kari Payton. He's in The Walking Dead now. And he does the voice of Cyborg on Teen Titans Go.
Okay.
He gets his head cut off in Dracula Ascension. And then we put him in Hellraiser Hellworld a few years later. Henry Cavill was in that. Had some really, it was a fun cast. And somebody goes, we hired this guy. Oh man, he gets his head cut off here. We got to make a head cast. I was like, no. I already have his head in storage. I was like, no, we're good. We don't have to, we can save money on a head cast. I've got his head. It's one of our, lockers in LA. So that's like, quintessential horror movie day-to-day story. Whereas, on comedy, it was great. It's funny, you're throwing in jokes from off camera. You just exercise a different skill set on comedies. I just love to work. I've been fortunate in some ways to work for people that when I was an executive, like empowered you to be a producer, don't just sort of be like, hey, dailies look great, I'll see you at the premiere, but to really roll up your sleeves and get involved and get to know the process from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And then with Revolver, to be able to really apply, everything I learned on the studio level, but in the context of an independent producer was really rewarding. And the 2 sort of hats you have to wear, you have to know how to develop, right? There's 2 hats. There's the creative and the logistical. So on the one hand, you have to know how to develop a script, right? And give great notes and make the script come alive and be ready to shoot. On the other hand, you have to know what everything costs and know where to shoot and know, how to deal with the guilds and do all this sort of, infrastructure, almost mundane work to actually make the movie happen. So I always wanted to develop both those skill sets, because some people have one or the other that they excel at over another. And I always tried to have at least a medium
balance.
Some sort of balance between being a creative and sort of logistically being able to pull the movie off. So I do love that there's a creative component to this job. And right now, while I'm sitting at home, like everybody else in the world, like, you get to exercise that part of your brain more. But I really love in my career being able to balance nuts and bolts producing with, aspirational artistic producing. So if you can find a balance between those things, then hopefully hopefully that satisfies you and you can get a good career going.
One last question just popped into my head is, we've all had projects, including myself, that you're developing and they just don't get traction for whatever reason. And then you have to pull the plug. You have to kind of tell yourself, take the horse behind that shed and shoot it. It's like, it's dead. Has that happened to you? And how do you know when to back off and say this isn't working? Does that come from wisdom or?
It's a great question. These are great questions.
It's one that I'm asking because I see a lot of people. And I'm like, oh my God, you're still working on that. It's been like 8 years, and I want to just do something else. Get inspired by something else. So personally, I'm interested in it, and I think if I am, maybe somebody else would be. And
there's a multi-layered answer to that. First of all, and I'm with you, by the way. But first of all, though, if Pet is actually a testament to staying, dedicated to a project, right?
Exactly.
Like we're talking about Pet, it's like that was around for years before it got made. So that's like, whether it's an outlier or, whatever, but that's an example of not giving up. But to answer your question, I don't know, there's just a feel. There's really not like a set, and I'm not saying you were saying this, but like, there's no set rules or like set moment where you're like, we're fucking done. It's just,
right.
Yeah, it's just a feel. There's just a moment, maybe a moment where you're like, oh man, like, yeah, just we've gone through, all the actors that might be right for this or would do it, or fuck, we're not getting, directors are starting to pass, or I don't know, or, sometimes you're literally just out of money, whatever the fuck it is, right? So it's just by feel. It's a case by case basis. And there's some that are just like heartbreaking to have to give up on. There's some that you kind of never do give up on, even though you're not actively, day to day out there, advocating for
right.
it.
It's just kind of on the back burner.
Yeah. And, some ideas have their day and some don't. I mean, I'm sure any one of us right now can think of an example of some amazing movie that got made that was sitting on a shelf for years. So, but to answer your question, Tony, it's just case by case. And it just, you kind of know there's a moment where you're like, yeah, it's sort of dead. And it sucks.
Can I ask a question real quick that
No.
is kind of off topic, but I have to know?
I'm done. Sorry, Nate. I'm standing in my garage. Of course. Ask whatever you want.
So I see, obviously you worked on the Dracula sequels.
Yes, sir.
When you were with Dimension. I always found it interesting because, obviously Wes Craven was involved with the original one. And then when the sequels came out, they were very famously, it's like, the title of the movie was like Wes Craven Presents Dracula 2, Wes Craven Presents Dracula 3. How much involvement did he actually have to get that?
Just sort of more overarching developmental, mentoring kind of involvement. Patrick Lussier, who directed all 3 of the Dracula movies, was Wes's editor for years, and they had a great relationship. And Patrick's a great director in his own right now. I mean, he wasn't on set. I mean, we shot the second 2 in Romania. Like, he didn't fly over Romania. But no, I mean, got notes, looking at a cut, and he just was really involved in the Dimension family in general. But no, I mean, it just, like you said, just EP kind of stuff, presentation level involvement, which is, suggestions, notes, guidance, mentoring, that kind of thing. And a weird sideline, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Wes passed away. I read about it on my phone on my way to the Pet wrap party as sort of weird connective tissue. Yeah, I mean, it just was super heartbreaking because I worked with him a little bit on Feast as well, and he just was, I'm sure maybe you guys have come across him as well, but he just was, just unassuming, nice guy. But no, he was, just involved like an EP. And I'll give you one nugget because I'm standing here in my garage. So on some of those Dimension sequels, it was funny. You would just get tasked with like coming up with a sequel. You'd be like, all right, do blah, 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 3 or 4. And sometimes you would just have to boil it down to just like a half a sentence. Somebody goes, oh, come up with like a third Mimic movie. And I remember I just went Rear Window with cockroaches. And they went, yep, let's do that. No, I'm serious. So look at the movie. It's what it is. So no, it is. It's Rear Window, because I was watching Rear Window at home at like the day after my boss tasked me. And I was like, oh, I'll just do this. And then, so to answer, sorry, Nate, to get back to your point, Dracula 3, and again, I'm in no way comparing these films, but Dracula 3 is basically Apocalypse Now. which was also my my contribution to the development. Because I said, let's have the Jason London and Jason Lee characters go, like upriver, quote unquote, to find Dracula, who's now holed up in this, remote fucking village, and Jason Lee kills him. I mean, it really was like, those Dimension Days were so fun because they would just tell you to go make sequels and, just let you kind of run with it a little bit. So that's the kind of stuff you could do, is just be like, let's just make this, or let's just make that, or like, Hellraiser Deader was just a script that we had bought at Dimension that was unused, an amazing script called Deader that nobody could figure out what to do with, and we just repurposed it as a Hellraiser movie.
Oh,
and were those
I
the
didn't
two
know
Hellraisers that you did? Were those the ones that were shot back to back?
Yeah, we had 2 weeks between Deader and Hell. They weren't shot; they didn't overlap. They were shot, sequentially. And there was 2 weeks between wrapping Deader and starting Hellworld. I remember Rick Boda and I were in like the quote executive lounge in the Bucharest Marriott, just writing pages, for Hellraiser Hellworld. Because we just, when you make one movie and then suddenly have to make another one in 2 weeks, you suddenly are, you have to put on the hat to make that movie. So that was just fun. And it was just weird. It was fun. It just was fun.
Well, Nick, I have to say thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. I love talking to you, and we don't talk enough. We always cross paths every year or two, and we
agreed, Tony.
Never had like a long conversation like this. And
agreed.
It was great to hear your story of Pet, and I really think this is going to be a valuable interview. And you're just so much fun, such a great guy, and we just want to say thank you.
No, guys, thank you. And like I said, you're doing a great thing in terms of examining the role of the producer and really looking into that for people that want to potentially get into it. So no, thank you. It was a pleasure being with you guys, and talk to you soon, hopefully.
Awesome.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great night and get out of your garage.
Thank you.
Nick was a lot of fun, and he actually told me since he did the interview with us that he was drinking wine and he was in his garage, and he was just having a blast talking to us. But the reason why, everybody listening, the reason why he was in his garage was because he had a bad internet connection in his house. So he somehow went out to his garage and stood in some spot where the internet connection worked, and we were able to get through the interview. But I was like picturing him the whole time, like with a tinfoil hat on his head, and like positioning himself in just the right spot. I don't know. That's just my brain for you. Nick is really nice. I've known him for so long, and he's been an interviewee actually in some of my documentaries. The 50 Best Horror Movies You've Never Seen documentary. He was also in my Halloween 25 Years of Terror documentary. So I've known Nick for a really long time.
Yeah, Nick was great. I really enjoyed the interview. It was so insightful, and it was so nice to get the comparisons that he gave in regards to working for a studio versus independent producing, which I think is going to be very helpful to a lot of the listeners.
Yeah, and also I loved his comments about Wes Craven, because you asked him all about Wes and working with him and working with such a legend. One day I'm going to pull Nick aside and ask him to tell me a lot of Wes stories. I have a feeling there's a lot of them. Next week we have Scott Schneid and Dennis Whitehead, and they are the producers of the original Silent Night, Deadly Night, which came out in the mid-'80s, and it caused a flurry of controversy because various advocacy groups and parents and movie critics, they couldn't fathom the idea of a Santa Claus running around with an axe killing people. So, but they were part of a really cool film that is a staple in the horror genre. It's clearly a classic. And so they hopped on the phone with us to tell us all about that journey. So if you haven't seen Silent Night, Deadly Night, watch it before the interview. And that's it for Producerville from this week. And we will see you next week when we talk with Dennis and Scott.